must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
It is ridiculous and it is against the laws of nature that we can have somebody sitting pretty who takes home more money than the credible entrepreneur who is doing actual production of goods and services.
We always say it as it is. It is only in this country that when a thief is arrested, you hear elders from their tribe saying, "He is our son and he is our thief."
If you are deviant
Yes.
and I call you leader,
Yes.
probably you are already a leader, but you are leading in the wrong direction.
We want to see the role of the youth
Yeah.
in the security,
Yes.
governance,
Yes.
and development.
The youth that I meet and work with here, you know, we call them the millennials and X and Ys, this and that. They don't necessarily want to live like their fathers and grandfathers,
Yes.
do business like their fathers and grandfathers. They're more independent, they're better educated, and they're the ones that are making everything move in this region.
We look at the issues, we talk about issues that impact people's lives in Africa. The African peoples themselves continue to cheer bad leaders, and because they cheer them on, they continue to be misled.
Let me ask you, doctor, would you rather be somebody who does not enjoy so much freedom but you are rich?
Yes.
Or you'd rather be poor who you are actually imprisoned by the poverty itself?
My goal is not to come here and say, I want the majority ownership, I want to own this, I want to own that, I want to do this. My goal is we all make money and we're all happy, and I help build a big business here.
Punchline is for Africa, with Africa, from Africa.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Good evening, viewers. Welcome to Punchline Africa TV. Thank you very much, viewers. We shall be commencing our show, MATSANGA Africa Perspective. Thank you very much. Viewers, this show of MATSANGA Africa Perspective this evening, we look at the wave of regime change in Africa. Has Africa caught a fever of regime change? Is there somebody pumping regime change in Africa? Is there a situation in Africa that needs to be corrected? Is there a situation in Africa? Is there a situation in Africa that we have to change? What is forcing Africa to go the way it is going? Why are there regime change mechanisms? Who has planted these regime change mechanisms? From the north to the south, east to the west, it appears there is someone prepared, logistically equipped, supported, and supplying the regime change mechanisms in Africa. Elections have become a determinant factor for regime change, and the opposition parties going to the trenches seeking to overturn governments. Is someone regime changing in Africa? The answer is yes. Sometime 2016, 2017, I predicted that 13 African sub-Saharan countries will go down on regime change. I predicted very well to the extent that today I'm vindicated. Today we see the generation after generation. Today we stand by the people of Africa and tell them the truth, that there is a new wave of tactics to dismember this continent. Right from Zimbabwe, Khartoum, now Malawi today. The events coming out of Malawi this morning and yesterday indicate that the type of despondency, the state becoming unruly against its own citizens. The citizens becoming unruly against their own state. Is there a regime change sponsorship from George Soros? The answer is yes. For those who had doubted my words are coming. The words are coming. We see the signs. We see the symbols. Shakespeare said, when you see the symbols in Julius Caesar and the Maccabees, when you see the signs, there is a problem. When you look at the skies, the type of politics that is being practiced in Africa, you can't sleep, you can't walk, you have to talk. When you see brother against brother, when you see accusations against accusation in the political systems of Africa, there is always a sign, there is always a symbol that somebody is sponsoring a regime change in your country. Very many people listen to white professors, but they don't listen to black professors. They listen to white doctors, but don't listen to the black doctors. Black doctors who have read the same subject, even better than the white professors. Today in Africa, we have a problem here. Today in Africa, there is a big, huge problem. There is a problem that we are not listening. We are not listening to each other. We are listening at each other. We are talking at each other. We are not talking with our brothers and sisters to understand that we have external elements that are pumping in money to overthrow governments in Africa. The situation in Malawi this morning and last evening, and by the way, I will send, we shall see the Malawi situation right now, and you can see the mess that Malawi has found itself in today. But what causes we have a caller? Yes, caller. Yes, caller, speak up.
Am I live or not?
You are live.
Okay, remind me the topic, please.
We are live. Can I send you the topic link, please? I am live on the television right now.
About if it's being hoax or not, right?
The regime change in Africa.
The regime change in Africa is real. Let's start from Libya. Let's come to Sudan.
Yes.
Kenya. This is Kenya. Some people like you who are very brave actually told us what will come to happen, and it never happened. You know, we are very clever people, Kenyans. They tried on Ugandans, they tried on each country, but they are successful in Arab countries. I don't know why. The George Soros money is making these NGOs, you know, do a lot of evil things in Africa. So the regime change is real. It's real. It's happening. They want what can I say? The properties and the richness of Africa. You see the countries with oil, the countries with gold like Congo. They try to create rebel. They arm the rebels. Try to create havoc here and there. You see, so the problem is not about democracy or them trying to bring good governance. No, they have their own vested interest. So the regime change happened in Libya. You see how Libya now is. They are living on aid. You have seen Sudan. We have seen a lot of other countries. Tunisia. We have seen a lot of other countries which has actually succumbed to George Soros' money.
Okay.
Now, George Soros used NGOs. They are trying means and ways, you know, to destabilize countries and place their own puppets. You see, who play to their own tune and who will play to their own, who will dance to their own music. So
Okay.
it's written, it's happening.
All right. Thank you very much, my brother. From Mombasa, you are Timberlake from Mombasa.
We are more than 50 people. We are sitting somewhere having coffee and we are watching the program. But I have just arrived and that's why I called, you know.
Thank you very much. Let's finish the program as it is. I will come back to you.
Expect more calls from my people from Mombasa.
Thank you very much.
You'll be very busy today, I'm telling you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, viewers.
We respect you. You're one of the best journalists in Africa. You're one of the best investigative journalists in Africa. You're one of the best Pan-Africanists.
Thank you very much. Viewers, that was a caller from Mombasa in Kenya, in one of the capital cities of Kenya. Let's come back to the subject. The regime change that you see in Africa. Look at that is what is happening in Malawi, in the parliament today, in the state house. That is what has happened. Let's watch. In the parliament today, in the state house. That is what has happened. Let's watch. In the parliament today, in the state house. That is what has happened. Thank you very much, viewers. That is the situation in Malawi. That is the situation in Malawi today. And it is getting worse. It's going on. There is no sign of ending violence. But let's come back to the question. Today in Africa, do we need elections? Does Africa need elections? Do we want elections in Africa? Are we prepared for elections in Africa? I am raising this question because I'm asking my fellow African people, wherever you are, do you need elections? If after elections we are preparing for dead bodies on our streets, if after elections we are preparing to destroy property, if after elections we never concede defeat, if after elections the winner takes it all, if after elections there are roadblocks laid to stop the opposition from demonstration, do we need elections in Africa? Isn't it the right time for Africa today to look at other avenues of having their peaceful existence and a coexistence and a cohesion without elections? Does China have elections? We go to borrow money from China. There are no MPs in China. Does China have elections? The answer is no. China has never had elections. You don't see elections in China, but you see development and tranquility in China. We borrow money from China, which does not sit and make a budget, but it only calls members for 1 week in Beijing to solve the problems of Africa. Today, as we speak, as we look at Africa, what kills Africa? What destroys Africa? What destroys Africa is exactly what I've just told you. We are over-ambitious. We are not tolerant. We are corrupt. We are ignorant of our rights. We plot for others. We accuse others. We maim others. We create wars. We create conflicts. We destroy our economies. We starve our people. We create hunger. Where there is plenty, there is starvation. We have converted development, turned it into wars. We kill each other. We listen to the masters away from our own continent. If you look at Africa today, the Africa that we want to leave behind for our people is an Africa that is mutilated, disintegrated, dismembered. Dismembered because people are not happy. If you look at Cameroon today, you go to Yaoundé and you go to Amazonia, you find the death rate is higher than what you expect. If you look at Central African Republic, you find people killing each other from one day to the last day of the year. If you look at South Sudan, you find the peace process is fragile, uncoordinated, destructive, and can create more havoc than it is. If you look at the places in Uganda, it's a time bomb waiting to happen. If you look at the situation elsewhere in Zimbabwe, there is always something that is telling you things are not very good. If you look everywhere, in Khartoum, in Ethiopia, there is a problem. If you look everywhere in West Africa, in Togo, there is a problem. Who is funding this problem? The biggest question is Africans fail to see who funds this regime change. I have been consistently telling people that George Soros has got very many avenues of funding regime change in Africa. The penetration of George Soros' money into our judiciaries, our institutions, has increased since 2018 November. Since 2018 November, George Soros has pumped almost $1 billion into African countries, which is not seen on the budgets of most African countries. Since 2018 November, the facts are very worrying that there are more people being trained, politicized, indoctrinated into regime change robots on the African continent. If you look at the regime change that has taken place in Khartoum, the regime change that has taken place in Khartoum, you will understand why in Khartoum there is always, and it is going to be, business as usual. The demonstrators in Khartoum have agreed to go back to the streets because they don't agree with the master plan that was put by George Soros, George Clooney, and another gentleman, Pendergast. Pendergast is one of those neo-colonial NGO master who has worked together with George Clooney to sponsor the regime change that we see in Khartoum today. If you look at events taking place in Eritrea, Asmara, the hashtags of Yaki, these are all regime change tactics. Viewers, is it time for Africa to evaluate itself? Is it time for Africa to change its methods? Is it time for Africa to rethink of which way, which type of elections, which type of governance that we need in on the continent? Is it time for Africa, therefore, to seriously think of abandoning some of the theories of the old school of thoughts of Socrates? Is it time, therefore, for Africa to know which enemy is coming, when and how? Is it time, therefore, for Africa to stand up and challenge the status quo? Is it time for Africa to go and ask why African Union has been taken over? Our African Union watches the wars in Cameroon. It has watched the war in Biafra. The people in Nigeria, some parts are not sleeping. People have lost faith in the African Union. Thank you very much. Let's take a break and come back. What's happening? It went down again. Moses ako wapi? Moses. Moses, is he here? I want to call upon the people of Abazonia today, wherever you are in the diaspora in Abazonia itself, that in a struggle you are bound to have divisions. But divisions should not divert you from the main focus, the main challenge. We have struggled to expose the happenings, the human rights abuses in Abazonia. The army has killed hundreds and hundreds of thousands, burnt houses of people, internet was cut off, schools were closed, dispensaries, hospitals were burnt down. Abazonians should not be intimidated by Paul Robia. It is not upon the leaders of Abazonia, because I am not from Abazonia, but I've played a pivotal role in making sure that I loud out the voices, I put out the call, I call upon AU, EU, United Nations, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International. Many of them have listened to some of the things that I say here, and they have come at last. America, United States of America, is slowly moving towards giving the Abazonian people the dignity they deserve. I therefore call upon the leaders and the leadership of the Abazonian people to unite for a purpose. The unity of purpose is paramount, as opposed to disunity, which has nothing but only produces ego that we have seen in South Sudan. What has killed South Sudan is not because they don't have the money, the minerals, the resources. Is ego between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. We would not like to see that ego come to the people of Abazonia, the leadership of Abazonia. I call upon Samuel Sako, Akanga, Miran, and Eko to unite and talk with one voice on international scene that will bring about the peace, the tranquility that you yearn for since 1961, when the resolution 1608 was abandoned by the United Nations General Assembly and Abazonia was annexed by the Cameroon government by then. I call upon you, my brothers, to pick up the unity call and free your people without disintegration. Thank you. Thank you very much, viewers. Welcome back to the second and the last segment of our show. The wave of regime change in Africa. As I have said in the first part, most of the parts in Africa, the countries are under the spell of regime change. If you look at most African countries today, opposition looks alien. It looks as if it's not the opposition of that country. If you look at Kenya, for example, the President Uhuru Kenyatta has taken a stand to create what we call Building of Bridges initiative. The Kenyan scenario was stopped because Uhuru decided to shake hands with Raila Amolo Odinga. The Ugandan situation is worse because President Museveni has tried to call out for peace and dialogue, but the main party has refused to come on table, citing many obstacles that they have had with the president so far. The situation in Zimbabwe is the same, citing quite a number of things that we see that are not very good, citing examples of a direct meeting between Mnangagwa and the leader of opposition, Nelson Chamisa. One of these problems that the people who want regime change have is that they have the same common denominator. The same common denominator is they are funded by France, by an agency external, by George Soros. The George Soros situation makes everybody get worried. Wherever you are in Africa, watch your back. There is a regime change. There is George Soros money. $1 billion pumped into African countries, civil society, to change governments. Viewers, I want to take this opportunity to say one or two things. In summary, in a short clip that will be broadcast to you and it will go to YouTube. Thank you very much, viewers. This is my take. Today in Africa, we see a lot of uprisings, planning for uprisings, plotting for uprisings in several African countries. We see an agitated civilian population wanting to take over their governments through a violent regime change. The events on the African continent, therefore, as predicted much earlier myself, in 2017, I said, before 2020, 13 African countries would have undergone either soft regime change, soft coups, or violent regime change through uprising, which now seem to be real. The signs that and the symbols that we see are the real symbols and the signs that more is to come against African governments. What do we do then? There is a new method of changing governments strategically placed in the United States of America by George Soros. George Soros funds civil societies, civil disobedience, civil violence in Africa. It is upon you Africans and African heads of state, wherever you are, as you plan to convene next month or before the end of this month in Addis Ababa, to understand the magnitude of this regime change strategy. Many wars are taking place, internal strife, conflicts like the one in Cameroon, Amazonia, like the one in Biafra, Boko Haram, and then in Biafra, like the one in Libya. But the theme is the same. Regime change, uprising. Is it a matter of taking over our resources? You see, the war in Congo has erupted again. Unknown militias have arrived in Congo, restarted the war, and it is going on. All these culminate to one thing. Are we ready to be independent? As I said last week, this week, are people in Africa ready to accept the results of elections? Elections everywhere in Africa are bringing the chaos we see. The people of Africa seem to be divided after elections or before elections. Is Africa ready for elections? Do we need elections in Africa? If so, are we tolerant enough to accept the results, the outcome of these elections? If so, are we tolerant enough to concede defeat once elections have taken off? Once elections take part, are we ready? Which method can we use in Africa to make sure that there is hope for the countries and there is hope and the future of Africa is guaranteed? Viewers, the events in Malawi today, the High Court in Malawi today or yesterday was hearing a case when the president had already been sworn in. If the president of Malawi has been sworn in, then the High Court is hearing the case. Is that not a disaster, an accident in waiting? Whether this will make us have a peaceful Africa remains to be seen. And may God help us to build a better Africa. Thank you very much.